This is the Carl DeMaio Show. We're giving you the story behind the story. We're leading the fight to take back our state for a better California. Let's talk about healthcare. This is a topic that's near the top of most voters' priority lists. When you do the surveys, polling surveys, you'll find healthcare, the cost of healthcare, the complexity, the lack of access to healthcare, the diminished quality of healthcare. All of these issues are rolled into one big concern that our healthcare system in America costs too much and provides too little, and that there are many people out there who don't have adequate coverage, adequate access to medical care. Democrats have cued into this issue. They have spent a good amount of time offering government as the solution. You know, obviously it started out with ObamaCare, and that's been a big disaster. Costs have skyrocketed, while at the same time we haven't had the same sort of access to the care that we were promised. Remember the whole line, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Well, it was all a big lie. Now today, Obamacare is not enough. What we need to do is turn the entire healthcare system over to government through Medicare for all. So the Democrats are focusing on healthcare like a laser beam. They're really cueing into the deep-seated concern that people have on healthcare costs. Republicans, you can barely see them talking about healthcare. I mean, seriously, the Republicans ran on the platform of repealing and replacing Obamacare back in 2010. And they got the Congress, the House of Representatives. They won the majority, largely based on Obama's overreach with the government takeover of healthcare. They said, if you elect us, give us the House majority, we'll repeal Obamacare. They came into office and they didn't do it. Then in 2014, we gave them the Senate because they were saying, well, what you need is the House and the Senate. Then we'll repeal and replace Obamacare. So we gave them the House and the Senate in 2014. And Republicans, nope. No repeal, no replace. Then finally in 2016, we gave them the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and they choked again. They let down President Trump, who was pushing for the repeal and replacement of Obamacare. Senator John McCain, who campaigned on repealing and replacing Obamacare, broke his word, betrayed his constituents, voted against even a modest proposal for repeal and replace. So today we're stuck with Obamacare, which is it's government intrusion, and now a even bigger government takeover, a complete government takeover with Medicare for all. And that's all we're hearing. Nothing from the Republicans. And I find that dangerous. I find it shameful, and we have to do something about it. So I'm releasing a healthcare reform plan, and since Republicans don't seem to have one of their own, I figure I'll fill the void. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But I do want to make sure that we're all on the same page as it relates to the healthcare system. First and foremost, the reason why Republicans need to address healthcare reform, not only is it a problem, but it's a deeply personal problem. And when an issue is deeply personal, when you're affected personally by the issue, it becomes one of the biggest motivators for your voting choices. Think about it this way. You have a family member who's killed by an illegal immigrant who is shielded by a sanctuary city policy. You may not have been involved in politics up to that point. You might have even been a Democrat saying, oh, yes, let's have open borders. But when something happens to you, to your family, in a very real, direct way, when you experience emotion over an issue, that results in that issue becoming one of your prime motivators and drivers going forward. Now, think about it from healthcare. You're diagnosed with an illness. A family member is diagnosed with an illness. But you're told, sorry, you can't afford the treatment. Or you're trying to get a doctor to see your loved one or to see yourself, and you're told it's going to take 6 months. And then when you get in there to the appointment, you're given maybe a few minutes, and you don't feel like you're getting the priority or the quality of care that you deserve, and you're paying through the nose for it. Suddenly, when you have that experience, healthcare reform becomes a real priority. And healthcare is very emotional because you'll sit there and worry not only about your diagnosis for yourself or your loved one, but then you worry about how will you pay for it. Now, that's if you're diagnosed with an illness. Healthcare also becomes a very noticeable issue when you pay your healthcare premiums. And so every October, we do the whole open enrollment thing. And, actually late October, November, open enrollment. I just did mine, a few weeks ago. But the whole cost of healthcare becomes painfully obvious when you see the adjustment in your premiums. And then you say, well, wait a minute. I'm paying $700, $800, $900 a month, and I still have a deductible that's $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. It's not as emotional as being diagnosed with an illness and not being able to get access to care, but money is pretty darn emotional. And so those are the two reasons why Republicans ignoring health care or are just offering lip service. Like, oh, I'm opposed to Medicare for all. It's a government takeover. Oh, ObamaCare is broken. Repeal and replace. Well, where's your replacement plan? Nope, don't have one. If they continue to play that game, they are going to lose elections. Because more and more Americans are experiencing either an illness for themselves or their family, or they're looking at the premiums skyrocket higher and higher. That's money out of their pockets. Those two factors make it very emotional as an issue. And that's what Democrats are tapping into. They're offering a fantasy. They're offering a lie, a big lie. The Democrats are saying, in order to get better health care, we should trust government. Well, hold on a second. Government's the reason why we have a healthcare crisis. Coming up, I want to walk through why government intrusion actually is the real cancer, the real malady, the illness that we have to address. Government intrusion. That's on the Carl DeMaio Show, but first these messages.
Carl DeMaio here. From raiding our road improvement funds for bus and bike lanes to gas taxes and congestion taxes, politicians keep making it harder to drive. Traffic will only get worse unless we demand change. Join me, Carl DeMaio, by signing the petition at fixsandiegoroads.org.
Carl DeMaio thinks it's time to clean up the mess in Congress and take a new approach to solving problems. That's why Carl DeMaio is proposing the Fix Congress First plan. Make Congress live under the same laws the rest of us do. No special exemptions. Eliminate lavish congressional pensions and other perks. Force Congress to open up its own books and records to public review. Make Congress read the bills first before they vote on them. No budget, no pay. Permanently take away Congress's pay for every day the budget is late. If we want better results from Washington, we need to start by fixing Congress first. That's why it's time to help Carl DeMaio get his Fix Congress First plan enacted. Sign Carl's petition and help fix Congress first.
You're listening to the Carl DeMaio Show, and we're talking about healthcare reform and why I think it's a mistake that Republicans are not more vocal and more aggressive in offering a healthcare reform plan. Democrats are all over this issue. They're offering snake oil, quite appropriately, for healthcare reform. They're out there saying that government's the solution. But we already saw their idea. It was ObamaCare. And what ObamaCare does basically is say, you can't trust yourself to make healthcare decisions. Government needs to tell you what sort of coverage you should receive. And so ObamaCare came in and said, number one, every health insurance plan shall provide the following coverage. It's called the Essential Health Benefits Regulation. And that's like telling someone, well, you really don't know what cable package to buy. You really, really don't need sports, but you absolutely need the Jazzercise channel. You absolutely need the Hallmark channel. I mean, you might sit there and say, oh, but I like sports. No, you don't need that. That's frivolous. But you have to pay for the women's channel and BET. And, you go through all this stuff and you're like, no, I don't want this. I don't need it. But government tells you what you should have to pay for. It also involves all sorts of regulations on the healthcare providers. And then on top of that, you're forced to buy it. There's an individual mandate. And if you try not buying insurance, you'll be taxed. The other big program that provides healthcare is Medicaid. And this is where our poorest individuals with the most pressing needs actually are enrolled in. And the Medicaid program, which is completely government run, its own set of regulations, rules on providers. The individuals are given welfare. It's a government subsidized healthcare program. Of course, government run healthcare, the VA. Yeah, that's been a real success, huh? No, it's been a complete and utter disaster. So much so that we've had to get out of government and offer veterans an opportunity to go to private providers if they're not given the quality of care that they deserve. Medicare, you might say, well, isn't that a nicely run program? First and foremost, it's not free. We all pay Medicare taxes. So we actually are paying a whole lot of money. And Medicare basically is run through the government. But people there also are having to turn to the private insurance market and ask for additional coverage and pay for that additional coverage to get the quality care that they desire. So we've already experienced the whole government intervention in the healthcare system. And every time we expand the role of government, things get worse. Costs go up. Quality goes down. Choice is limited. And so take a look at what really is the core problem in healthcare. It boils down to a primary cause. There are secondary, tertiary causes, but the primary cause is cost. The more something costs, the less of it that's available. Accessibility goes down. The more something costs, the more people cut corners and diminish the quality of what they're offering. And so when you take a look at cost, what is going on in the medical field? There's a great graphic that I want you to take a look at. In fact, we include it as part of my healthcare plan. It's on it's right in the front of the healthcare plan. It's from American Enterprise Institute. And it shows price changes January 1998 to December 2018, so over a 20-year period, showing various things that have gone up in price. Cars, flat. Price of a car, completely flat. Household furnishings, down somewhat. Clothing, down. Cell phone service, down dramatically. More than 45% more affordable over 20 years. Computer software, down 50% more affordable. Toys, down 55%. TVs, down an astounding 92%. So things that have become more affordable. Cars cost the same, but the technology stuff, computers, TVs, cell phone, much more affordable. Why? Because technology has made things more accessible, more flexible, cheaper. What's gone up in cost? Food, up about 56%. The average inflation has been 56% over 20 years, by the way. Housing, up 58%. Average hourly wages, up 80%. So at least we've outpaced housing and food. Oh, but what's going through the roof? Two things. And they share a common theme. College education and healthcare. both of which have a heavy dose of government and has had an expansion of government seen over the same 20-year period. College textbooks, college tuition, through the roof. Nearly 200% increase in the 20-year period. Hospital services, 220% increase. Medical care services, 120% increase. And so you take a look at this and you have to ask, okay, if things are costing more and more and more money, but in the healthcare arena, we've had more and more innovation, more and more technology to make it easier to actually do records and make it easier to actually transact services, better technology to diagnose people. Why is it getting more expensive? It's simple. Government mandates, government regulations, government intrusion. All of that has imposed tremendous cost. A couple examples real quick. HIPAA. This is the privacy law for healthcare. And again, you might say, but Carl, everyone should have private healthcare records. Yes, we should, but can you tell me what big crisis led to HIPAA? I really can't find a big enough crisis to require all of the costs associated with the HIPAA law. And all the passwords and all the files and all the data streams and all of this has imposed a tremendous cost. For what ailment? Can someone please tell me why we passed HIPAA in the first place? Why not punish the people who misuse and abuse healthcare information, sanction them, rather than imposing all sorts of rules and regulations? Or just simply say, hey, you guys get to decide how you keep your medical records, provided that there are no violations. Plain and simple. Let the market figure it out. Don't cause government to have all sorts of prescriptive regulations. Here's another great example. You go into a hospital. You get an x-ray of your arm. Do you know that x-ray costs different amounts depending upon who's paying? If you come in to pay cash, you pay X. If you walk in an insurance setting and your insurance company looks at that x-ray, it's X minus Y because the insurance company negotiated a discount. Same x-ray, two different costs. Oh, if you're Medicare, it's X minus Y minus Z because Medicare negotiated a bundled price. Oh, and then if you walk in and you're Medicaid, it's basically nothing. Pennies on the dollar for that procedure. But somehow the hospital has to pay for the price of the machine, the technician, and so they take and they pass that cost on to you. That's why we see aspirins costing $11 per aspirin. Well, the aspirin doesn't cost $11, but all the bureaucracy, regulations, and the fact that others aren't paying for their aspirins, that causes an impact on healthcare. Oh, and speaking of people who don't pay, don't get me started about the illegal immigrants sitting in the emergency room, and we're providing all sorts of care to those individuals. And also don't get me started about the homeless population, that because we don't enforce vagrancy laws, we don't treat the mental illness and substance abuse problems, we have tremendous healthcare costs with that population. I could go on, but all of it has one common thread. Costs driven by government inaction, government failure, government mandates, and regulations. Take a look at that chart. It explains so much about the healthcare crisis we face. Now, coming up on my next episode of the Carl DeMaio Show, I'm going to lay out the Republican alternative for healthcare reform. It's called FreedomCare, and I think you're going to like it. Spread the word. Have people go to carldemaio.com and join our campaign. This podcast was paid for by Carl DeMaio for Congress. I'm Carl DeMaio, and I proved this message.